Greetings, folks. I'm meteorologist and veteran storm chaser Tony Laubach. Welcome back to my channel. Here you will get to experience the storms, the chases, and the stories that have made up the last 30 years of my storm chase career. And of course, all the years that have yet to be written. If you enjoy storm chasing, weather stories, and a few peeks behind the curtain to see a chaser's life on the road, I invite you to like this video and please subscribe to the channel. Every other Friday, I will bring you along on a new adventure in my storm chasing career. Many of the old legacy chase logs of the decades gone by, all the way through the present, and the chases that are yet to come. And folks, this is only the beginning, and it's fitting because this video will take us back to the very beginning. The story leading up to that fateful day in the early years, getting my wheels under me until my life's forecast finally started to verify. So without further ado, I'm beyond excited and for the first time ever to share this story with you. So sit back, relax, and enjoy reliving my first storm chase ever. Let's take a trip back to the 90s. I hail from a small town called Circleville, Ohio. I was a huge weather nerd, I had a crappy camera, and I had absolutely no idea that chasing the weather would eventually become my career. But my obsession started years before all that. Growing up in the Buckeye State, tornadoes actually scared me to death. Whenever there was a tornado watch, I would stay up late watching the Weather Channel radar until the storms had passed and the watch had expired. But despite the fear, I was the kid that spent his grade school recess in the school library reading encyclopedias about natural disasters, namely tornadoes. But the moment that changed everything came in 1991 when an F5 tornado ripped through Andover, Kansas. Seeing all that incredible video on television absolutely captivated me. A year later, the Weather Channel aired a special called The Enemy Wind. In that documentary, they featured a storm chaser named Warren Faidley, the author of this book, and yes, he even signed it a few years later. It was because of that special I was introduced to the concept that people went out and actually chased storms. And at 12 years old seeing that, I remember thinking, that is what I want to do. By the time the movie Twister came out in '96, I was already completely hooked, but was still so excited to see this movie. And I want to say I saw it at least 6, maybe 7 times. It wasn't my inspiration. I was already well on my way, but it came at the right time. And for a lot of people my age, that movie created what's now called the Twister generation. And only because I wasn't old enough to drive did I end up falling into that era. So was it Twister that got you interested in storm chasing? Or maybe you're just too young for that. Perhaps you actually experienced a storm growing up. Let me know in the comments below. What got you interested in storm chasing? Tell me why you are here. Around that same time, I was taking a life planning class with Miss Happany in second period, and we had to write a career plan. My opening line said this: after I finish high school, I plan to attend a 4-year college and a major of meteorology. After college, I hope to begin a long career in the field of storm chasing in the Great Plains of the United States. Little did I know that dream would start just 1 year later. It was May 14th, 1997. I was home after school napping on my couch when my mom walked in and said a tornado had been reported southwest of town. Almost at the exact same time, my dad walked in the front door from work and overheard this, and I looked at him and said, "You want to go chase it?" He didn't even hesitate. I grabbed a road map, a piece of tracing paper, and my point and shoot camera that had about 20 exposures left in it, and after telling our neighbor we were going to go chase a tornado, we were on the way. The plan? Drive straight west to Washington Courthouse where the tornado was reported to be near. As we left town, I sketched a quick diagram of a supercell on the tracing paper, plotted it over the road map, trying to figure out where we needed to be as a local radio station was giving updates on the storm as we drove along. I started to explain to my dad what we'd encounter on the way to the tornado. The heavy rain, some hail, maybe big. And that didn't deter him, so I knew we were gold. As the storm moved east, we approached from the west along US 22, and when we got to Route 207 west of Williamsport, I could see the backside of the storm and knew we needed to turn south. So we took that southeast Route 207 toward Clarksburg, getting into the rain and what I would eventually call a tremendous hailstorm, dime-sized hail mostly, but lots of it, and we were getting some hail as big as quarters too. I was getting pretty anxious, and I imagine my dad probably was too. The visibility was horribly low, and I knew the tornado was back there. But for all we knew, we were about to drive right into the darn thing. But things started to clear as we approached the small town, with a double rainbow greeting us as the backside of the storm finally started to push east. We got into town and decided to push straight through on 207, clearing the buildings when I yelled at my dad to stop the car. There it was, my first tornado. The funnel was about halfway down from the cloud base with a little dust swirl spinning underneath it. I was out of my mind, and my dad was stunned. I jumped out of the car, and if I had to guess, I would say we were about 3 or so miles southwest of the tornado. I took just 2 pictures because I swore at my young, gullible age that this tornado was going to get bigger and fully condense, and I didn't want to waste all my pictures prematurely. The funnel eventually roped out, but the dust whirl continued under the storm as it moved east. We stayed with the ground swirl for a while as we drove southeast on 207, but it eventually vanished from our view as our distance from the storm started to increase. We eventually ran into a state trooper who hadn't seen the tornado yet, but I passed along my report that we did, and he led us to a paved road that took us back to the north. But at this point, the tornado was miles east of us, and all we could see was the backside of the supercell. We had followed it for about 15 minutes, but at this point decided to head back home. My dad and I were both beside ourselves. We were trying to process what was happening. And my mom was equally as excited when we burst through the door to share with her the news that we caught the tornado. Beginner's luck, she said. Even then, I knew she was probably right. But think about it for a second. Your kid says he wants to be a storm chaser. So after years of listening to this, you drive him out to chase a tornado for fun, and the kid actually finds one. After a lot of celebratory jibber jabber, my dad and I actually turned tail, ran back to the car, not to chase another storm, but to drive to the drugstore before it closed so I could develop the film because I wanted my pictures that night. My first tornado on my very first storm chase. Less than a year after one of the best moments of my young life, I would receive some of the worst news of my young life. We were moving from my hometown across the country to Colorado. One night around the holidays, we sat around a fire with a map, closed our eyes, and pointed to where we should move. 2 of us landed on Colorado. I cheated. I totally peaked, landing squarely on Ohio because I didn't want to leave. I was in the middle of my junior year at Circleville High School and was getting pulled away from everything I knew. But in April of '98, less than 2 months before the end of the school year, we left Ohio, and I started my Colorado chapter, finishing my junior year at a new high school in Denver. But that first summer in Colorado, something started to change. Storms were different, and there was a lot of hail, but a lot of really pretty lightning. And while my parents weren't wild about the idea of me driving their cars into hailstorms, lightning was something I could chase with less chance of totaling the family car. So being inspired by Fadley's lightning photography, I would run out to area overlooks near my Littleton home on stormy evenings and literally take my shot on a much better Canon AE1 SLR. And for my first 2 summers in Colorado, that's what I chased. Most of the time, it didn't work out so well. And at one point, swear to God, I shot an entire roll of film with the lens cap still on. But eventually, I got my first lightning photograph, and then my second, and then they started to pile up. But after graduating high school the following year, I decided I want to chase my dream and move to Oklahoma to become a meteorologist. It was my first choice, and for me, it was a no-brainer. OU was the mecca for severe weather. So after taking a year off and buying my first car, a minivan, I loaded that van with the small bit of my belongings, and in the summer of 2000, moved to Moore filled with more excitement and nerves than a 19-year-old can hold back. Reality hit pretty quickly. School was expensive, money was tight, and I was struggling. I was working 2 jobs to pay for school, delivering pizzas and working in mail processing, and my van was constantly having issues, and there just wasn't enough money to go around. It was rough. But a literal bright spot on October 22nd. Severe storms moved into the city, so I bailed in the middle of the 4th quarter of the Redskins game. Fortunately, they were already on their way to whipping the Jaguars by then, so nothing to lose there. But I drove north on Eastern Avenue from my rented room in Moore, and as I approached Crossroads Mall, a bright flash from an exploding power line lit up the sky, and for a brief moment, I could see it. It was pretty dark, and I didn't capture any video, but there I was, in the heart of Tornado Alley, seeing my second tornado. By the end of that semester, I just knew Oklahoma wasn't going to work. So I finished the semester, and in early 2001, I packed up my van again and drove back to Colorado. At the time, I felt like a huge failure. Oklahoma had been my dream. But there were other paths to being a meteorologist right here in Denver, so I had to get my head back in the game. But storm chasing was still calling, and it would only be a couple of months later before I would return to Oklahoma on what would be my first ever long-distance storm chase. In April of 2001, I would make an overnight drive after closing my pizza shop into the Texas Panhandle, waking up after a short snooze on my first high-end storm setup thanks to a wailing train horn that would become a regular alarm clock for me during my early years of travel.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Dalhart, Texas at 8:30 in the morning. Inside the van, I've been up for about 10 minutes. My sleeping arrangements have been made.
That setup ultimately never panned out for me, and I basically chased gray skies across the Panhandle into Oklahoma. Now that is storm chasing, folks. The following year in 2002, I started keeping official storm chasing statistics. I wanted to track everything like baseball stats, but for chasers. Miles driven, storms chased, tornadoes seen, among other things. And I finally moved on to what I would consider to be my first real chase ride, a 1999 Mercury Tracer, which I decked out and immediately dubbed the Storm Tracer. And on May 5th, 2002, she took me back to Texas for my first Great Plains Supercell chase.
This one will leave a few dents.
The storm produced golf ball-sized hail and incredible structure for this rookie's eyes. And while I missed the headliner tornadoes further south, I felt very accomplished, like finally I had taken the next step. But with money tight and opportunities few, I stayed pretty local for the few chases I had the rest of the season. But in 2003, an opportunity presented itself. After the storm chasing conference in Denver, I was invited to become a freelance video stringer, meaning I could finally start to make a buck out there. And in late April, I sold my first ever severe weather video, this hailstorm outside of Fort Morgan, Colorado, and then again the following day on another hail chase, this time in the Denver area. Suddenly, I could afford to chase a little more. And 6 years to the day after my first tornado, I would depart Denver on another overnight drive, once again to the Texas Panhandle, where the following day I would chase my first ever high-risk setup, but this time it would be so much different.
There is a tornado on the ground. Look at that. Look at that.
Folks, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please drop a like and let me know when your first chase was in the comments below, or are you still waiting for your first chase? And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you can get notified with each new upload. This is only the first, and believe me when I say you'll love what is to come. Until the next video, I'll see you under the mezzo. Ciao for now, my friends.